Nick Saban returning to college. Just stop it. Just stop. I gotta. Goodness. The beauty of the modern age is that this is my job. And I love my job. It is great. I can reach a lot of you in a relatively simple manner. The downside of the mass media age is you get rumors flying around that don't actually have a basis in reality. So, my favorite piece that was covering this particular matter, I'm going to talk about why, even if it were a legitimate rumor, which it does not appear to be, it wouldn't make any sense anyway. On the Sports Illustrated page for West Virginia, this is Skylar Callahan. I think I'm pronouncing his first name correctly there. Nick Saban to West Virginia, that's not happening, folks. Rumors with no basis are flying around, so it's time to put an axe to them. And he does indeed put an axe to them. So the basis of these particular rumors are rooted in the idea that Nick Saban does have historical ties to the state of West Virginia. And, well, that's about it. That's about it. And in the internet age, you can just get cycling. You just get people going. You just get them churning, thinking, and connecting a couple of dots, and boom, it can take off. This would make absolutely, positively no sense. 3 reasons. I'm going to spend a couple minutes on each reason, but 3 reasons why it would not make any sense. Reason number 1. Why on earth would Nick Saban go to West Virginia, which is not only a Big 12 school, but is about to be, depending on how the final few games of the season go for Neil Brown and company, whether Saban would come on as an assistant, which was speculated about, or be the head coach or anything of the sorts. Why on earth would he go to West Virginia? That is Nick Saban. That is the greatest coach. This would be like Bill Belichick, who has, of course, retired and I think probably wants to coach again in football one day, going to the Panthers. Like this, there's just a disconnect here. But it's even more severe than that because of the disparities in, money and brand power in college football. West Virginia makes no sense. This is the greatest coach in the history of the sport. A guy who many, myself included, would vote to elect college football commissioner if there were one, and the sport would probably be better off if that were to take place, but it doesn't appear as if we're anywhere close to that, so we're at the mercy of television executives and conference commissioners in the meantime. So Nick Saban, if he decides to come back to coaching, do you know how quickly Florida would fire Billy Napier? Even if Billy Napier won 8 games this year, do you know how quickly they would remove him from that position to hire Nick Saban? He could go get any job that he wants. Heck, Alabama fans, at the very least, some might take him back. I think Alabama would take him back, and I don't think they would, but I think Alabama would take Nick Saban back before Nick Saban went to go coach at West Virginia. And West Virginia can be a solid job in the Big 12. We have not seen it at its peak, in its glory days for quite some time. It can get back there in the new look Big 12. I don't have any doubts about that. I've got plenty of doubts that just because Nick Saban has spent some time there and was on staff once upon a time, or whatever ties people are trying to, connect, I just, no, that just doesn't make any sense. A guy who can go into a car parking lot not a parking lot, but into a dealership. A guy who can go into the dealership and walk away with the most expensive car in the lot is not going to walk away with a beat up 18-year-old car that's on the lot for a couple $1,000. He's not going to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that particular car. I have one of those cars. I've got a 24-year-old car. I love it to death. I'm going to it is fantastic. It does everything else that other people's cars do, and it does it for a lot less money than a lot of other cars cost. But there is no way that if Nick Saban were to return to college coaching, he'd go to the Big 12. No. I respect the Big 12, and it's beneath Nick Saban. Those two thoughts can be held by the same person at the same time. So that's the first reason. That's the first reason Nick Saban coming back. That doesn't make any sense. The second reason is the idea that Nick Saban would return to college football does not bear in mind why he left in the first place. Did he leave because he wasn't capable of winning? Did he leave because the game was passing him by? No. last time I checked, won the SEC, beat the two-time reigning national champions in the SEC title game, and went to the playoff. And his team was one fourth down stop away from having a chance to play for another national championship. So it's not as if he wasn't good enough to be a head coach in college football. The reason he left is because, and we have seen this with other coaches in college football, but especially in college basketball as well. The game itself is not passing by. He's adapted to the new era of offensively driven football. You know, it used to be LSU and Alabama would play games and nobody would score a touchdown. There was a 9-6 game in Tuscaloosa once upon a time. I mean, it's an all-time game. I remember it very well. Those games don't exist anymore. Those games are not around. You have to adapt. And he did. He's a defensive guy. They still prioritized defense very heavily while he was there. But guess what? They recruited big-time offensive players. So they weren't being left behind. The reason that Nick Saban got out of coaching is because he didn't want to deal with all of the craziness right now. I don't think it's realignment because Alabama's not going anywhere. The SEC is in a strong position. It's not as if he wasn't financially compensated enough. It's that between the transfer portal and NIL, old school coaches are not as comfortable operating in that space because it requires a different approach. And it's not that the players are doing anything wrong by capitalizing on all this freedom and power that they didn't have before. And I don't think that coaches are doing anything wrong by saying this is not the way, this doesn't allow me to run the program the way that I want it to. It doesn't allow me the opportunity to coach the way I've coached my whole life. I'm 70 plus years old. Why do I suddenly have to change radically the way that we acquire talent? Why is there such a big fundamental shift? These are not small things to deal with NIL in the transfer portal. So those aspects of college football that help drive away Nick Saban or Jay Wright at Villanova, Coach K, Roy Williams, like the list goes on and on. Tony Bennett at Virginia most recently in the college basketball space. And I think it's going to drive Mac Brown out of Chapel Hill here momentarily. Those have not been resolved. There hasn't been a tightening of the rules. There hasn't been an adjustment. There hasn't been a pendulum swing in the other direction. So that's the second reason that Nick Saban would not come back to coach college football right now. It hasn't settled. He left because the temperature got cranked up to 1,000. He said, look, you need to bring it back down to at least 200 or 300, and I can endure that. I don't even know if he said that. I'm just kind of speculating here. But the temperature hasn't been taken down on those matters. So that's reason number 2. And then reason number 3, do you watch him on College Game Day? Do you know what he's making? I don't know if it's public information. Let's see. Let's see if that's available. Saban, no, it doesn't look like that. He also makes, according to Sporting News, he makes $500,000 annually in his new advisory role at Alabama. I'm going to presume that College Game Day is giving him in the 6-figure range to be there, to show up to work. Now, there's preparation that goes into it, of course, and there are segments to pre-tape and there are conversations to be had. Like, it's a lot of work to do College Game Day, but Nick Saban is bringing in plenty of cash right now. He's not short on money anyway, and if you watch him on there, I think he's enjoying himself. He doesn't look like Desmond Howard or Kirk Herbstreit or Pat McAfee in terms of what a happy, joyous Nick Saban actually appears to be. But I think Nick Saban's having a pretty good time. So the sport didn't pass him by. The style of it did. And it hasn't been rectified yet, or at least adjusted in a way that I think most coaches would agree it needs to be. He's enjoying his gig. And I mean, West Virginia, I mean, come on. Just think these things through. Say them out loud. It was a ridiculous notion, but got me thinking, would he ever come back? I don't think he will. I don't think he needs to. I think he likes where he's at. Hard to not when you are sitting on that chair every Saturday morning. You're still around the sport you love. You still have a bully pulpit level of influence that you never know where that could lead in the future. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.